Hello, everyone. Thanks for coming to our talk. First, let us introduce ourselves. I'm the guy on the left. I'm originally coming from the Czech Republic. I've been doing application security since 2007. I started with Securus DLC in 2008. In 2011, I moved to Germany to work for 1&1, where I'm currently leading application security team in a division which develops and operates portals, including Web.de, GMX, and Mail.com.
Yes, hello, and my name is Reuter. I'm working in information security till 2011. I worked together with Daniel at 1&1 and left 1&1 in March, but we are still working together for the project we're going to show you today.
Yep, so let's try to begin about what we are trying to achieve or why we actually started developing something. If you test applications yourself for security, you probably experienced the situation that you test one application, you find quite a lot of low-hanging fruits like missing HTTP headers, trace method enabled, and so on. And then you move on to the next penetration test and you find exactly the same findings and on and on. So, and these common security requirements, they often get forgotten, and during the time you find out that there are actually quite a lot of security requirements being forgotten according to properties of the applications, what you're testing, according to teams, and so on. And the idea is that actually these security requirements, we should make sure that they fit the development workflow. So when you're addressing your normal functional, non-functional security requirements, you should also specify the security ones. And as the development world gets more and more automated throughout the time, then it's quite clear that we need to automate as well. As for the security requirements themselves, which kinds of requirements we actually know? So the first one are quite, the first type is quite obvious. These are something like security properties of the system you're just building. So things like you're using prepared statements instead of SQL concatenation, or you're setting HTTP headers, and so on. But the second thing, what is actually security requirement for us, are certain lifecycle activities. So if you are building an artifact, let's say, or an application, you should make sure that you follow certain procedures. And what these two things have in common is that if you work with some kind of ticketing system like Jira, for instance, then in the end of the day, both of these types of requirements land in the same ticket systems, but most probably in different ticket queues. So let's say if your security team has its own ticket queue where are things like do a pen test for me, add this artifact to our vulnerability management, and so on. And on the other hand, you have a dev queue where you say, okay, set these HTTP headers, or your ops queue, and on and so on. And when we began with SDLC at 1&1, basically the first thing I did was that I took ASVS, awesome projects, and then I went to developers because they asked me, okay, I'm developing a new application, so what should I make sure that I don't forget? And I showed them ASVS, and they didn't really react very friendly because they said, okay, and fine. Okay, I will go with you through that list once. But in the end, you find out, okay, there are like 180 requirements currently, and you will find out that for your use case, maybe only 60 or 30 are actually relevant. So also what I find out during the time was that ASVS, for instance, is quite a lot focused on QA, actually, rather than on the proactive view. So when you talk to a developer according to ASVS, then you say first requirement, you say second requirement. He was like, okay, this is for me the same thing. I'm addressing this requirement. I already explained to you how I do it. So there is some optimization potential. And the second thing, which I mentioned, the filtering potential. So depending on whether I'm developing a web service, front-end web application, JavaScript client, mobile app, certain requirements are not relevant for me and certain are. So how we are trying to implement our idea was that we have obviously developed a tool which we call Security RAT, RAT for Requirement Automation Tool. And what we do with requirements, we observe them on an artifact level. So what is an artifact for us is usually deployable, but sometimes it can be also like library, which gets shared among more applications. So this is something what we found out. This works quite well also with the more agile methodologies. And how do we address these? Of course, the best way is to do this when you are creating actually a new application or a new artifact. So the moment where you know, okay, I'm going to develop something, is the most efficient way, obviously, to think about security, what I need to address. But what we also started doing, meanwhile, quite a lot, are something like gap analysis, where we go over our legacy software, and we, during an interview or during a fast test, we go through the requirements, which are in theory relevant, and then we find out, okay, have you thought of these, have you thought of those? And then we identify to-dos, and the development teams need to address them. Regarding the workflow, how does it work? So we have here our tool, and we have some security role. In our organization, we call this security role a security mentor, and we have one security mentor per development team. And the first thing you do is that you define the artifact. So what I'm going to develop, is it a web service, mobile app? Is it critical piece of software? How does the authentication work? Does it have session management? Is this internally, externally available? And so on. You get some requirements, and then you define, okay, what are you going to do with these? And what we do afterwards, we have a, let's say, special Jira queue where we persist these properties as YAML attachments. So you can always have a look, okay, what are the security requirements which certain artifact should fulfill? And once you have this, what you can also do is that, because you will find out that certain requirements out of these will generate actually issues. So you can automate this actually very, very easily and place these issues in a batch mode in the right queues according to their properties. And the final and, let's say, most favorite thing, especially by management, is that if you have all this information, you can actually report out of this. So you can say, okay, it was agreed that this application would fulfill certain requirements. So then, and you can always get the status of the Jira tickets and say, okay, has it actually been done or has it been refused? Is it still open? So that's theory. Now Rene will show you how does it look like. So I hope the demo gods will be with us.
Hopefully everybody can hear me now. I have to apologize that I do not stand in front of you. This is because the duplicate mode of the presenter is not working. We have to use the extended mode. This is why I have to look up when I show the demo. Also, I'm going to show a live internet demo. You know all Murphy's Law. So I'm kindly asking you to not use the Wi-Fi at the moment. Okay, let's have a look at our tool. So this is our tool. I just do a reload. Oh, no, this is not our tool. So here it is. At the moment, we are using cast to authenticate. On the server is running OpenCast from Aperero, and I already authenticated against this, and my role currently has the admin role. But there are also user roles you can have, but I'm at the moment an admin. So what I do at the beginning, I say I want to define a new artifact as an example. As Daniel already told, we have a lot of filtering possibilities. So let's say it's a new cool tool, and O tool. So, and we have to define some filtering arguments. Let's say criticality perspective, it's a medium application. Artifact type, it's a front-end application. And authentication will be done via a single sign-on client or centralized. If you do not know what kind of types these are, we always provide help with a tooltip where everything is explained what's behind it. So if someone does not understand the concept behind it. So let's assume we are going to have a single sign-on client. Session management will be done via session IDs. And reachability from our front-end application is externally, it's not internally. At least we have to specify the implementation type. Currently we have 3 types we can specify. Internal means the application is internally developed and internally hosted. External means the application is developed by an external vendor but is hosted internally. And cloud means externally developed and externally hosted. So for this use case, we're choosing internal developed. Just hit generate, and the tool will automatically find the requirements which fit to those kind of filters. At the moment, we have 51 requirements found, and what you see here is a short name for a requirement, a description for a requirement, more information where you can find more deep information about the requirement. Next column is motivation, so why should you do that security requirement? And we have a so-called status column, in this case strategy. Strategy means for every requirement, the customer has to say if he fulfills the requirement. You can either say it's a task, so we have to do it because it's currently missing. Implicit means some third-party framework do this for us. Refused means we're not going to do this. Clarify means actually we are not sure at the moment. We have to check back with some local experts if this requirement is met in our artifact or not. And irrelevant means, okay, this is completely out of scope and doesn't fit in our application. As Daniel mentioned, the first category here is lifecycle. Those are all the lifecycle requirements, like appoint a security mentor role. And if we scroll down a bit, stuff like perform and document a penetration test. So all lifecycle requirements. After that, there are technical requirements, which are mainly focused for the developers. So let's scroll down a bit. I do not want to show you everything, stuff like that. Session IDs are transferred in cookies only. You can get some information for the developers with Markdown, so they can easily understand what's in that requirement, what are the stuff I have to do as a developer. So, and you would go through that list of requirements with a lead architect and a lead developer of that artifact and comment in the comment phase, okay, is it relevant? Yeah, it's relevant, but we are not sure. We have to clarify that. So let's say clarify to be done. Also the next thing, we are not sure, clarify to be done. So you go on every requirement step by step and fill it out. So in the end, what you can also see, it's 51 requirements, might be a lot of requirements, and it will destroy the developer if he sees it first. So you have the possibility here to filter in the tool. So stuff like we have tags where we can apply filters. It's a client-side application, so filtering is only, everything is client-side here. Only the data is sent from the back end, but everything what we here do is client-side. So we can just easily type, okay, just show me only the lifecycle requirements I want to see, or let's see, I only want to see the technical requirements, or if you have in your SDL at your company some gates in your development lifecycle, you can filter directly by gate. But everything here is highly customizable by the administrator. So you can edit everything you see here. It's not fixed. Even if you go through the workshop and you see, okay, those requirements are really nice, but we are missing one special requirement because we have a really special implementation. You can easily say, okay, I want to add to my current requirement set my own requirement because it's very special what we are doing here. So how about session management, some session stuff. And let's hit it. And you have to add a strategy, it's a task, and add that requirement. And if I filter again for session management and scroll down a little bit, you see our custom requirement I just added. But this is only client side. And as Daniel showed in the workflow, we have to persist it in some way. So we came up with the idea to persist it in a Jira. So you see the button save here is marked in red, means it's not saved. And as it's a client-side app, the data will be lost if you're going to leave the tab. So you have to save. So for that, we have a running Jira here. I just copy the URL. And so what I can specify here, I can specify a ticket or a queue. If I specify a ticket, it will be directly imported into the ticket. If I specify a queue, a new ticket will be created for that. This is what I will do now. If I hit export first, it will show me, okay, this is a summary for the ticket, this description. It will ask Jira, what kind of issue types does the Jira have? It will communicate with the Jira API. And you can say, okay, this is a new artifact. Let's say it's a task, and go on export. So now it says a new one is created. And we can have a look at it directly into Jira. What we'll see, a new ticket was created with the name of our new cool O tool, as I mistyped it. And we see as an attachment, here's our YAML file attached. This is where the whole structure and all the requirements are inside the YAML file. And we are also doing some automating comments, which means, hey, this is a new artifact. You can directly import the attachment by clicking on that link. And the second link is for the newest version. As you are further developing your application, you're going to change your YAML file, and we will always update it into this ticket, so new attachments will be attached to the ticket. So let's import it again by just clicking the link. So, and it will say, okay, it's imported for us. This is what we've done before. We see 22 requirements. Also, the new one we created is inside. Let's have a look, double check. There's the one we just created. Okay, so now we saw, okay, we have now exported our artifact. We should now export the tickets to the devs. What I've done in strategy, I have marked 2 as clarify. We weren't sure, so the developers have to clarify those. So I just filter for the ones I clarify, where the strategy is clarified. This is 2. And say, okay, select them all. And action with those selected, create Jira tickets for me. Again, I will be asked to enter a Jira queue. In this use case, you normally specify a developer queue. Here, for the demo, we have 1 Jira instance running, so I'm using the same Jira queue. So after just create tickets, it will tell me, okay, what issues are those? Okay, those are, again, let's say bugs. We add 2 labels to the tickets. We can also add custom labels, look, stuff like that, for the developers, like the project name, whatever, and just hit create tickets. And you see 2 tickets were created. And when we are looking in one of this ticket, we will see our labels we created with a description is the whole requirement, with the requirement description, the more information, and the strategy for the developer. Also, we are doing a link to the SDLC artifact that you always link back to it. The same is for the main ticket. Is this the main ticket? No. Let's have a look at the main ticket. This is the main artifact ticket. And here we will also see the new tickets were created. So now there's some kind of report time for the security mentor. So I will just import the tool, the artifact again, and something changed now. First of all, I see I can now select which version I want to import. As we are going to export the tickets, the main ticket was updated automatically, and we see now with the timestamp there are 2 attachments in the main ticket. So I can select the newest, as this is a change with the developer tickets, and import that. And if I filter again for the clarify one, I see here status. And this is the status of the Jira ticket. So it asks the Jira queue, what is the status of this ticket? So here the security mentor easily sees, is there something marked as won't fix? Is there something marked as resolved? Or do I have to do something because the developers, there's a long open ticket. So it's easily for him to track down the status. here is my filter. Also, let's assume you're in a workshop with the guys and you say, okay, the description is really nice from that requirement, but I do not like the more information. I do not understand that sentence. How to do that? There's an easily feedback button here where you can click and you will see the description and everything, and there's a suggestion you can give back to the admin of the tool and say, please change wording, something like that. And if I click on submit, in the admin specified Jira queue, a ticket will be opened and will say someone asked for a change for a security requirement. And as admin, you can now decide to change it or not if you want. Also, at the start, we defined the filters we see here, like medium, front-end applications, single sign-on, session IDs externally. But sometimes you may have decided wrong in the beginning. So how about now? Let's say it's not a medium criticality app anymore. Instead, it's a high. So criticality changed. So you can do that without any problems. Just hit generate. It will ask the backend again for the requirements, and it will come up with a just modal and saying, okay, the change was successful, and to your current requirement set, null were updated, but 9 new requirements were added to your current requirement set. Also, null were removed, because sometimes you can also downscale. You can say instead, if you have a high one, you can downscale to medium, then there would be written 9 were removed. So there were 9 added at the stuff. Also, what's also possible, requirements, security requirements shouldn't be fixed. They should live. They should change over time, because there's always constant new vectors, constant new attacks. So, but we're on a client-side app. So if the customer defined this kind of set and the project is running for 2 years, he's working 2 years with those kind of requirements. That shouldn't be the case. So let's draw here something. I'm an admin, and this is a simple CRUD interface we have for the backend. And here's my security requirement, appoint the security mentor role, and let's change it, just add something like foobar to it. So let's wait. Okay, it's now also written into the database. I can kill those tabs now. And where is my main ticket? And up here, 26. So, and let's import it again. I'll just click on the link, import it again. Again, let's import the newest version of it. So, and what happened, you now see a new red button popping up over here, updates available. And it's going to tell you updates for your current requirement set you are currently using is available. What we do is, every time you are going to import is, we will ask the backend and check with your current requirements if something has changed. So if he's going to say updates available, we see a summary where it's saying, okay, one requirement was updated for you, nothing were added. Sometimes new requirements get added or removed. And now he has to specify if he wants to approve the update or not. So in this case, the old one is marked in red. The new one with the foobar is marked in green. And he has 2 buttons where he either decline the update or can say, okay, I want to approve it, click on approve. And the new one is automatically updated in his requirement right now. So now we can work with an updated requirement set. So also what we have done is, as everything is working on the client, and you see the button save is red, he hasn't saved his project, and let's draw the case Firefox was crashing. So you worked 2 hours going to every security requirements, didn't hit the save button, and Firefox crashed. So now tell the lead developer and lead architect we have to do this again. They will say no. So this is why we came up with the idea it will also warn me if I didn't save it, but I explicitly say, okay, go out. What we are doing, if you make a change and you're not saving it, every 30 seconds we're doing a backup in your HTML5 local storage in the browser. So in the worst case, you're losing 30 seconds. So I can easily say those buttons were not here the first time I showed you the tool. I can delete the previous session or restore it, and then the previous session is easily restored with the foobar involved. If you're going to save it in the Jira ticket, we are going to delete the local storage because of data privacy. So you're not usually working always on your laptop. Maybe you're losing a laptop from your colleague. So if you're going to save, we are cleaning the local storage. So, and as a last use case I want to show you is, I've showed you for internal development. But what's with external development? First of all, you can't give an external vendor access to your tool, and you can't send him a YAML file. He will not understand that. So for this type, let's say, new external tool. Let's make it quick. It's medium, it's a mobile app, single sign-on. Those are not mandatory. You can also leave them out. Then you get a standard requirement set, reachability extern, and implementation type external. Now let's hit generate again. It looks nearly the same. The only thing which is changed now is the status column is changed from strategy to fulfilled. Because the external vendor only has to stay if this requirement is fulfilled, yes, no, unclear, irrelevant, or partly. So, but now again, you have this kind of view here, and a YAML file doesn't work so well. So what I want to do is, we also have lifecycle requirements again here, but you do not want to give lifecycle requirements to an external vendor. They are usually tied to your internal development process. So, oh, sorry, wrong button. Let's just mark the technical ones. Those are 19 technical ones. Select them all. And instead of Jira tickets, I will create an Excel file. This is also the Excel file is generated on the client. No server communication involved here. And we're going to open up. Yeah, sorry, it's on my screen here. So let's move that across. We have an Excel file with the requirements, with the motivation, and also here with the drop-down where he has to say what he has to fill out here. And he now commented it and will send it back to you. This is how you should address security requirements with an external vendor. You should not give him access to your internal tool. Yeah, and switch back. In the end, this was it for the demo. Those are the use cases for our tool. I will do further with the slides. We'll go on. Yeah. Okay. For me, the part is just to talk a little bit about the internals, about the tool. What is a tool? The tool is a so-called JHipster, is the underlying framework. JHipster is just a Geoman generator used to create Spring Boot and AngularJS apps. You can easily scaffold an app. So the admin interface I've shown you, that simple CRUD interface, that was just easily scaffolded after we draw the data scheme. And I want to tell you a little bit about the data scheme because we programmed Security Red very generic. So you can do whatever you want with the requirements. Also the columns you saw, the names, stuff like that, you can easily customize that as an admin. So first of all, we have our requirement skeleton. This is a security requirement like written, you need to use a brute force protection. Tied to a requirement skeleton is always a requirement category. For brute force is authentication. Also, you saw the collections, and every collection has a category. So for a requirement has a collection category criticality, and you can select a low here. Also, I showed you the tags, like lifecycle, technical, and some gates in your development lifecycle. This one is technical tag, and the tag category it's in requirement. Also, you can add some optional columns. This is more information, where you can give the developer more information about the security requirement. Also, you saw the status column for internal development. This is called strategy, but you can name it whatever you like. For external, we called it fulfilled. And you have an implementation type, which is tied to a requirement skeleton, if it's internally or externally or both. And what you can also customize, what I didn't show you, is you can add to an optional column, like more information, so-called alternative sets. What are alternative sets? You can easily extend the more information with patterns. you saw that we used Markdown. So let's say you are mainly using Java applications, so you can add directly as an alternative set Java code to more information. So, and when you generate the requirements, you will see in more information directly you can select Java or any program language you want to specify and can show the developer some best practices in Java, stuff like that, which is also going to be exported and will be shown to him so he can easily adopt that. So this for the data scheme. Also, the ticket system integration I showed you with Jira. What do you need for that? Really hard is course, because you need to add course header. Usually you can't communicate with the Jira REST API without course headers because the same origin policy of the browser would kick in. So you need to add course headers for your ticket system. Otherwise, Security Red can't communicate with the API because Security Red inherits also the user rights. So if you're not allowed to create a ticket in the queue, Security Red is not able to do that because it's doing it with your rights you have. Also, you need to allow get and post for the ticket queue. And as a last thing, or not last thing, and Daniel will finish after set, the requirement set you can start from scratch. You can define all your requirements by yourself, or you can use the default one we are going to provide, and which the one I've showed you here. We provide that as a MySQL dump. This requirement set is mainly focused on web development and mobile applications. So we have released the tool I've just showed you on GitHub 2 or 3 weeks ago, and currently it's 2 projects: Security Red, the actual tool itself I showed you, and security requirements. This is the default requirement sets, which you can just dump into your MySQL database to have the requirements I have shown here. So, and for the last 10 minutes, I will hand over to Daniel.
Okay, so we presented current status. This is how the tool and the requirements look now. What we are currently working on. First thing we hope to release next week, because we are almost done with that, is Docker image, so that you can easily ramp up. Just you download Docker image and everything's running inside of the container. Next thing we are working on is actually own user management, because right now Security Red uses CAS, because that's something what we use. And this is actually, on one side, this is cool, because CAS is pretty robust, and it means, okay, you can just easily bind Security Red to your environment if you're using CAS inside it. If you don't use CAS, this is a bit pain in the ass to configure it and get it running quickly. So we are hoping to solve that during summer. And last thing, obviously, as every developer, we focus more on development rather than documentation. So next current task also for us is to create things like GitHub pages and so on, in order for people to make it easier to ramp up. Then we have a few areas of further development. So first thing, obviously, we keep working on steadily, and which we want to improve are the requirements themselves. So there are other things you can also like add to the requirements. So for instance, one thing we started with are test cases, where for instance, test cases from OWASP testing guide are linked. So how can you actually test this requirement? How can you verify whether it got fulfilled? You can, we don't in the moment use the alternative sets, so Java patterns, framework patterns, and so on, telling you how to solve this. So this will be next era. Parameterization of the requirements. So you've seen a couple of tags, but there are actually a lot of possibilities. How, for instance, can I test it with a white box tool, black box tool, and so on, so that every role in your development process can actually filter what they need. And what we are working all the time on is that we sometimes, after we do pen test and we find out, okay, something was actually not covered, we add a requirement. but at the same time, we want to prevent that we have too many of the requirements. So we are still, if we, for instance, have a requirement which has not been relevant for last year or so, then we kick it out because it makes us slower and it obviously doesn't bring anything. So this is the balance we are trying to achieve continuously, basically. And next thing, but that would be for the next version, we want to also do some changes to the data scheme so that it gets a bit more flexible, because we also got asked meanwhile by quite a lot of stakeholders in our company who asked, okay, I would really like to use it, for instance, not only for security, but for our processes, so in order to make it even a bit more universal. Next area of interest is integration. So for instance, we integrated the Jira because we use it and that's it. But obviously not everyone uses Jira, so we want to support a different ticketing system, obviously. Next idea is that maybe it doesn't work for everyone, that you store, for instance, these YAML files in a queue, but you want to attach this file to your technical concept, or you maybe even want to generate your security documentation accordingly in your wiki. So that will be next area, and one thing for us, which we are looking into, is connecting this to some testing either tools or scripts in order for the developers to be able to say, okay, I think I've implemented this, so verify this requirement if it's now okay. So obviously this will be rather easy for things like HTTP headers, rather complicated for things like, for instance, cross-site sifting. And obviously for the moment, there are actually 3 of us working on the tool. So it's Rene, it's me, and then it's my working student, who's also, to be honest, doing most of the work right now. But we obviously would like to bring this tool into the security community for people, of course, to use it, but if possible also to contribute it. And some areas what is interesting for us are requirements. Right now we are a lot on the, let's say, in the web application development area, but there is like embedded, there is anything. So these like your custom requirement sets which work for you, or enhancement of requirement sets are interesting to us. Obviously, we have a lot of features we would like to implement and limited resources, so I think development is appreciated the most, I would say. So if you want to have a feature, if you implement this yourself and contribute back, that would be just awesome. And right now we have tried to run this application in a couple of different environments. We always find some tweaks we need to work on, so even like test reports, if something is or is not working for you, are helpful. And if you really don't want to get your hands dirty, then at least tell us what is interesting for you, how would you like to use the tool, because we might say, okay, this is actually interesting for us as well, and we will develop it ourselves. That will be basically it. There are some contact data. If you have any ideas, feel free to contact us. There is the GitHub repository, very fine, and I think now we have a bit of time for questions.
Thank you. Any questions?
What are the different roles you have in terms of accessing the console? You have admin, regular users. Is it flexible that you can manage different roles?
So the question was how our user management looks like. So for the moment, we have 2 roles defined in database scheme, and there is the admin role, which can alter the requirements, do also some configuration, and then there is basically any user who is authenticated by CAS is like something what we call front-end user, and front-end user is only allowed to generate requirements on his client and store it somewhere in Jira according to his rights, but is not able to modify anything on security red. The next step for us is that we have also something like backend user, With the difference between admin and backend user is that backend users will be able to change the requirements, but not the configuration of the tool, more system configuration. Yeah, sorry. Let's see. No, maybe, so the question was, what is the effort to add new requirements? Maybe you can show on the demo in the CRUD interface. It's basically, as Rene mentioned, we generated with the Japster CRUD interface and edited a bit. So it's pretty normal, like create thing, where you say, okay, you want to create, depending on what you want to create, according to the data scheme which Rene presented.
So this is it. You can just... This is actually just the easy CRUD interface. You can select the category. If you want to add a new category, you have to go to requirement category and add there a new category. But if it's going to fit in a category you already have, like session management, it's easily just a short name. It's kind of ID. Let's say SM0 or whatever, 999. A description, so just fill it out. Show order actually means how it's going to be sorted. So is it the first one in the category, or is it the last one, or in the middle? It's just for filtering also a little bit. Universal ID you can provide. You don't need to provide it. We don't use it at the moment. It's more for future releases if you're going to need it. Only thing is active and non-active means you're going to keep this requirement active, so the actual front-end user will receive it, or you can just store it in the back-end, but it's not active, means the front-end user doesn't see it. So active, and now we have to apply the attacks. We have, so let's say it's a technical, which is requirement owner is security mentor. You do not have to specify here everything. And now to the collections. This is what you already saw when clicking on a new artifact. So let's say this is a low requirement from criticality. For front-end applications, you don't have to specify that, either not set. For externally, and you can also multi-select if you want. You do not have to do single selects here. If you have more, and actually just hit save, and that's it to add a new requirement in the backend. So you can search for it.
Yep.
Following up on what you just showed, how easy is it to add new or custom categories? For instance, you had the internal, external cloud.
Yeah.
How easy is it to add? Is there a similar interface for that?
It's pretty much the same. It's CRUD interface, so we basically do this CRUD on the tables. So here you have all the entities we do have, and you can add, edit, modify the parameters as you want. To be honest, we didn't invest so much work into that yet, because obviously this is managed by admin, and what was important to us was that it's user-friendly, kind of, but that would be also like some nice-to-have feature to have it more friendly, let's say. Thank you very much.